Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to talk about the biggest hot shots and have nots of the last couple of weeks. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, Blake Creamer here with me. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Such a reach, Nate. Come on, you're better than that. All right, damn it. Oh, yeah. All right, that's my level of enthusiasm after your Josh Norris smashing of my Casey Middlestat. I hate this, but that's fine. Yeah, things are good, buddy. It's almost Christmas. Man, it has snuck up so fast on me this year. The kids are all sorted out, but honestly, I got to get all my wife's presents still. Oh, it's the 17th. Yeah. I usually don't do this, but yeah, now I'm going to be that guy just walking through Costco by myself. Yeah, lucky lady I'm married to over here. How about you, buddy? You guys getting ready for Christmas? You all ready to go?
We're getting there. Yeah, I still got a couple things on my mind to get squared away, but yeah, feeling relatively ready for Christmas at this point in time. Not looking forward to traveling, but yeah, that's the worst part of Christmas. I feel like traveling with kids, that's got to be the worst part.
I'll tell you what you do, buddy. You don't do it. All right. I keep my kids locked in their rooms. No, that's not true. But yeah, no, we're lucky this year. We're just having a kind of stay home Christmas. But buddy, did you get my present and everything? Because yeah, I got you something very special this year. So just throwing that out there. You know what I mean? I'm a size XL now. Unfortunately, I do a lot of sitting. All right, for this podcast. That's it's going straight to the muffin top. But there you go.
All right. Well, on that note, we'd better get over to some newsies. And well, let's start with Anaheim, where this is kind of just triggering me at this point. But Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, Jamie Drysdale went on this trip. We were all excited about their imminent return, and they didn't play all week, despite Anaheim having, yet again, a terrific streaming schedule. I held McTavish in a spot where I couldn't put him onto the IR Plus, had it all filled up with other injuries, and I was like, oh, he's going to come back any game now, and turns out I just wasted a roster spot all week, so that's super fun. But yeah, all these guys, I think they'll be back soon, but we don't get any information because this is the NHL, and the NHL doesn't care about us here in fantasy, unfortunately. Another guy that we don't have a ton of information on, but we should mention is Sean Durzi, was labeled unlikely to play in the lead up to Saturday's game, so take that for what it's worth. I think he'll be back soon, but again, not a ton of information forthcoming. Cale Makar's missed back-to-back games over the weekend here. Again, it sounds like there's something underlying there that's been going on for a while, and they're doing some maintenance on it. Didn't want him to take a back-to-back, I guess. Hopefully he'll be back and able to play, because 85% of Cale Makar is still better than 99.9% of all other defensemen on the planet. So hopefully Makar is back. That would be helpful for my Cupful team as well. Freddie Anderson is skating once again. Apparently, it's still about a month away, so we got some time with our Kochetkov streams. But yeah, be on the alert. Don't think that Kochetkov is the answer for your problems rest of season. I mean, if you've heard me say anything about goalies, then you would know that you can't assume that a goalie that you pick up is the answer for your goalie problems rest of season. You should always be on your toes when it comes to the goalies you're picking up. But regardless, Freddie Anderson about a month out there. Charlie McAvoy and Pavel Zacha over in Boston. So they weren't available for this game on the weekend, but apparently the coach there, Jim Montgomery, is very, very hopeful both for Wednesday. So hopefully that does come true there, and we get those guys back in our lineups. Apparently we have a Jake Ottinger update coming tomorrow. And yeah, there's just been no information since he left that game, and Scott Wedgwood is obviously taking some games there. And yeah, it's kind of odd to not have an update. And so, yeah, really don't even want to speculate as to which way it could go, if it could be something longer term, or if it'll just be some precautionary stuff they're testing to make sure it's not something more severe. You never really know there. So we'll get some idea shortly. Ekblad, as I mentioned, missed a game. It was labeled precautionary, so I'm assuming that means it's nothing too serious and we should have him back next week, but we shall see. Jared Spurgeon has missed a couple straight as well, but again, it's something that it doesn't seem like they're too worried about, or else they would have done something different, maybe moving him to IR retroactively and yeah, had him ready to come off this week. So I think Spurgeon will probably be good to go. Minnesota does have 4 games this week. So if you do roster Spurgeon, then this is probably a place where you should expect you'll get at least 3, if not all 4 games this week, in my opinion. Seth Jones is on IR for shoulder. He could come off on Tuesday again for that game, but really we don't have any information about whether he will or not. So you're going to have to just keep your eyes peeled there, kind of plan ahead for what you're doing if you do have him in your IR spot, that you might have to drop somebody if you want to get Seth Jones back in. I mean, maybe you're not dying to have Seth Jones back in the first place, so maybe you want to leave him there for a little longer, but I'll leave that up to you. And a couple notes from the games today. A couple of goaltenders. John Gibson didn't finish the game tonight. The update from the official Ducks Twitter account was that he was under the weather. So sounds like it's just a one-game thing and he should be okay. We've got a lot of illness going around the NHL. Austin Matthews missing the game. That hurt me in a couple spots for sure. In some of my matchups this week as well. So there's definitely a few different teams that are getting run through with the flu or whatever it is. So you got to keep your eyes peeled and be checking those lineups close to game time, and just be aware that you could have guys going out and being game time decisions for stuff like that. And then Aiden Hill left the game tonight. Looked awkward on the Norris goal. So take that for what it's worth, I guess. At this point, we obviously don't have any more information than that. Yeah, the Norris goal, he went over, didn't even try to go to butterfly, just kind of stood up and the puck kind of went through his legs. If he had gone into butterfly, I think it would have probably hit him in the breadbasket. But yeah, it was a super awkward looking play, and clearly something wasn't right there. So keep an eye on Aiden Hill. He's obviously battled some injury this year as well. And then, yeah, lastly, Vitek Vanacek was a late scratch. He was slated to start the game today and then was pulled out, and Akira Schmid had to start, and then got lit up by Anaheim, of all teams, without all those players that we mentioned before. Haven't really heard what that is, but I did see that wasn't an illness, so it wasn't just a sickness thing. There is actually some sort of injury that he's dealing with that kept him out, so keep your eyes peeled on that. Of this, Blake, what are you looking at? What's affecting you the most in this moment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, some interesting stuff. All my goalies were kind of janked. I had Vanacek ready to go in a really tight matchup. He was out, but then Aiden Hill came back, which was really nice. And that was late, but then he was out. So yeah, it kind of was just a wash. And then just to top it off, I have Corpusalo getting lit up by the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. So that's a super fun time for me. But yeah, that's just fun newsies as usual here in the NHL.
Absolutely. Well, let's get past all that. Let's get into some hot shots. And I think we got to start off with Ryan Nugent Hopkins, which is, I mean, let's frame this correctly. At the beginning of the season, we talked a lot about Ryan Nugent Hopkins as being an obvious regression candidate. He had the highest on ice shooting percentage we'd ever seen last year. It didn't seem like it was possible that it could continue, and it hasn't continued to the pace that he was at last year. He's on an 85-point pace now, still a far cry from the 100-plus point. I forget exactly what it was, 103 or something like that last year. 21 goals, 85 points is his pace for this season. That's still with a 14.8% on ice shooting percentage, so that's still sky high. But in his last 5 games here, he's got 10 points, 2 goals, 10 points, skating about 20 minutes a night. But what's interesting in the last little stretch is that he's actually pumping some shots here. 53rd in shots per 60, 17th in individual scoring chances for per 60. And you know, on the Oilers, anyone on that top power play is going to have really good on-ice stats. 22nd in Corsi for per 60 and 3rd in scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5 here. So talk to me about Ryan Nugent Hopkins. Does this change anything for you? and how you're valuing him moving forward. Do you think it's just a hot streak? What's your take?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had RNH on my sell high show, Cream of the Crop, that I did, and I still believe that he is on the season. But yeah, like you said, these metrics are pretty damn good the last 5 games, and that's something that's not that common for this player, right? Like, you mentioned his metrics there, but on the season, he's 276th in shots on goal per 60, right?
Yeah.
He's 202nd in individual Corsi 4. That's what Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is. He's not 53rd and 96th and then 17th in individual scoring chances for. No, which he has been in the last 5 games. So, but I don't know. That's quite that's a stark difference. So you got to take notice of that. Obviously, he's regressing, like you said, but maybe he is an 85-point player. Maybe Nuge, the regression is to an 85 point as opposed to like maybe a 75, which is what I was thinking it might roll down to this season. But he's looking good out there. I did catch a little bit of their last game, and he's skating really well. He's making really quick passes. Like he actually looks explosive out there, which I haven't really noticed RNH as a player doing. So he's just a player that is in a great spot. His role is completely secure, and yeah, he's feeling it right now. Like 10 points in 5 games. That's awesome. I think it's weird because Draisaitl isn't really going right now. He's not terrible, but Nuge is playing on a line with Draisaitl, and Nuge is cooking, and Dry's sort of just he's in the sidecar. Dry's in the sidecar. Nuge is driving. So that'll probably switch up here pretty soon in the season. But a really nice little stretch for Nugent-Hopkins. I still think he's a sell high, and especially now if you have like what he's been able to do here, you might be able to go for some big fish with RNH. So I might be putting some offers out and using this guy as bait.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I look back to what I had him projected for at the beginning of the season. I had him projected for 29 goals and 80 points. Pretty much bang on the ice time that he's getting right now. So yeah, basically just a few more goals, but less points overall. I think honestly, I'd hold to my preseason projection about a point per game, about 29, 30 goals, somewhere in there. I think he's a great player, clearly benefiting from the greatness of McDavid and Draisaitl, but you can't hold that against a guy when he's giving you this kind of production in fantasy either. So honestly, I think this 10 points in the last 5 games here is just kind of him getting back up to where he probably should be on the season, and we'll probably see it from here where he kind of levels out at around this pace. Noah Dobson is somebody we got to talk about. No goals in his last 5, but he's got 9 assists, skating over 27 minutes a night. I didn't think that his deployment could go any higher, but it has. Hasn't actually been shooting that much, which might explain the lack of actual goals. 136th in shots per 60 and 81st in individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5, but 26th in Corsi for per 60 and 36th in scoring chances for per 60. I've said it before on this podcast, but ever since Lane Lambert took over, the Islanders have completely changed. Like, I still think there's this perception out there that the Islanders are some sort of like defensive minded team, and they have not been that for well over a calendar year at this point. So if you still think that, you're really living in the past there, living in the Trotz era. So you gotta, that's one of the things that I constantly talk about too, is looking at some of the team metrics and understanding the team environment and how that affects individual players. It's really affected Noah Dobson this year. It's one of the reasons that, I went back and listened to what we talked about with Dobson, because obviously he's been one of the stories of the year so far with his point production, now on an 87 point pace for the season. And what we talked about, what I specifically said about Dobson was, you were higher on him than I was, actually, Blake. But what I said about Dobson was I'd like to be higher on him, but I didn't think he was going to get the minutes. I think I had him projected for like 21 minutes, something in that range. So he really did need the minutes to really get to this point. And then if he got the minutes, then I was going to be all in. And he's even gone beyond that. Like, you look at a 55% IPP, the 13.4% on ice shooting percentage, that's probably going to regress. I don't think he's a point per game defenseman on the season, but 70 points on the season I think is well within reach for a guy like Dobson. And I'm overall pretty excited now. I think this is here to stay. I always believed in the talent. He's still one of the better shooters. His shooting rate has dropped, but that's kind of just been a direct function of the fact that he's just skating way more minutes, it seems. So the actual output is still probably about exactly where it was, except he's just running into a lot more assists being out on the ice this much.
Yeah, this is exactly what you want to see with a player that you're excited about. Like, bang, 27 minutes time on ice. Yes, please. Right? Like, I think I was just looking at my projections now too, because you're talking about projections. I had him for 63. So that's nice, but I had him for 22 minutes as well. So I didn't have him for this 27, which is great, right? Because he was kind of getting the 20 to 22 minute treatment last year, right? They weren't really going with him, but it's also interesting. Look at these metrics too. He's like the opposite of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, like a player who wasn't a big metrics guy, and now the last 5 games has been cooking with his metrics. Whereas the last 5 games with Dobson, his metrics are not great, but like on the season, yeah, they're excellent. Like 38th overall in shots on goal per 60, 32nd in individual Corsi 4. That's nice. Right. That's kind of what I expect from Dobson, not 136th in shots on goal per 60, which he is the last 5 games, but Jimmy cracked corn, and I don't care, buddy. This guy's out there for 28 minutes. One thing I love about Dobson is his ability to generate shots from the back end, right? Those are defensemen that I covet. And, he's not currently doing that, but yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter. Obviously, Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat popping off are really helping Dobson there. Like, he's getting in a lot of those goals. But yeah, it's that deployment. I love it, and I love this player. I'm actually, it's hard. I would say about 2 weeks ago, I was sort of advising people to go kick tires on Dobson, see what you can do. And I just don't think that with what he's been doing lately and the minutes that you're going to be able to pry this player away from anybody for less than like a really good return. So there you go. But I'm loving Noah Dobson. I think, 65, 70 points is still, I'm real comfortable with that.
Yeah, really, it just comes down to getting that power play exposure to Brock Nelson, I think, right?
You know what? I've changed my tune. All right. The man's face, I can't look at it, but you know what? Hockey's a quick game. You can't really see his face if you're just looking at the number. You know what I mean? So yeah, this guy's crushing Brock Nelson. I love Brock Nelson. I'm changing my tune, but as you know, this show ain't no good. All right. That is Brock Nelson. That's on Brock Nelson's business card. We all know that.
All right. Let's talk about a couple of guys that were streamers that we were looking at in the waiver wire show on Friday when we recorded together. Nikolai Ehlers, Gabriel Velarde. Ehlers' ownership has definitely gone up. It had to. Both Velarde and Ehlers have gone up. Ehlers now over 50% rostered on Yahoo. He's got 3 goals, 8 points in his last 5. Velarde's got 4 goals, 7 points. They're both skating about 17 and a half minutes a night through this stretch. Ehlers 54th in shots per 60. Gabriel Velarde's 92nd in shots per 60, but 29th in individual scoring chances for per 60 is Velarde. And Ehlers is all the way down at 236th in individual scoring chances for per 60. It's a little interesting. Usually Ehlers is a really, really solid scoring chance producer, and it's just kind of interesting that it hasn't been there the last little bit, but obviously it's working. Still got 8 points his last 5 games. The one thing that Ehlers definitely does have is he's 8th in the league in on-ice Corsi 4 per 60. Both of these guys have really solid on-ice numbers the last little bit too. They're definitely clicking together on that top line and top power play alongside Mark Scheifele. What do we think about these two? What do we think about the sustainability here? Obviously, we know Kyle Connor is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks is the prognosis with that injury. We've talked about that here before. So moving forward, do you feel like these guys are locked in? How comfortable are we getting with this situation? Because if you are comfortable with these guys, I think you got to be pretty excited about what you might have on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Ehlers season, everybody. Yeah, we've been waiting for this. We've been talking about it for 2 years. This is the closest it's come, honestly. Like, the only issue that I see with Ehlers right now is still the deployment, right? He's still only getting that 16-minute treatment, right? 2 of the last 4 games, he has had more time than that. But in his last 2 games where he's popping off for big points, 16 minutes both nights, right? So it's not great, but obviously the thing that we've been clamoring for with Nikolai Ehlers especially is put him on power play 1. Can you do that, Rick Bowness? Can you do that, Scott Arniel? Like, it seems like common sense. I mean, literally, I'm sitting in a basement. You're a professional coach. We'll divert to you for the ultimate decision. But this one seemed like a no-brainer, and it's finally happening. Like, oh, Ehlers and Mark Scheifele can't play together. Sure, they can. All right, they're professional hockey players. They're both really talented. Put them together and see what happens. And now we're seeing it. It's incredible. And I'm a big fan of Ehlers, and I'm so happy that we won't be fielding a lot of questions on Ehlers, at least for the foreseeable future. But I think these are potential holds rest of season, or at the very least until Connor comes back, right? And then we assess and see what goes on, right? Because obviously they're going to prioritize Connor over Ehlers. They've shown, like, if there's any chance that they can push Ehlers down the lineup, they will. Right. So that said, I think Velarde is probably safer than Ehlers in terms of like what's going on right now, just because of the way they've sort of deployed Ehlers throughout the season, right? And throughout my time, or throughout Rick Bonus's time there. So long story short, I'm a fan of both players. I think I would prioritize Ehlers over Velarde at this point, but I think both should be owned right now, especially for next week. It's a great schedule, and their line's cooking right now. So let's see what they can do and just enjoy the production, everybody. Damn, and it's really been the last 4 games where Ehlers has been on power play 1. So if you look at their power play share, I was just checking it out: 54%, then 67%, then 68%, then 72% power play share. That's what we want. That's where we need Nikolai Ehlers, and that's why he's popping off, even though he has no power play points in there. I think it's just that's going to start coming too, right? So interesting stuff, but I'm a big fan of both players, and I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about Ehlers in the past and how I just want to kind of be in on the player because whenever it does happen, it'll happen big because all the metrics are there and have consistently been there throughout his career. Unfortunately, that didn't result in me getting Ehlers anywhere. I actually did roster him in one shallower league, and I dropped him earlier in the season when he was getting that 12, 13 minutes a night, and I was like, oh man, I'm just done. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of do what I say, not what I do in that case, and I'm regretting it for sure with Ehlers at this point. But there is a little bit of also like, how long do you have to hold a guy to make it worthwhile as well, right? Like he was actively hurting your roster at one point in the season, and those wins count just as much as the wins right now. So you definitely have to take all these things into account when you're evaluating. But as for right now, and as for the immediate future, when they're playing this well, it's easy to get caught up and to say like it'll never change. This is exactly what we are going to see for the entire time that Connor's out, and then we'll reevaluate. I'm not that confident. I do think that there's still a chance that Ehlers gets demoted after like 2 games where he doesn't have a point and like misses one back check somewhere. Ehlers is like the Winnipeg Jets version of Willie Nylander, where like for a long time it was like anytime Nylander missed any assignment, it was like, you're terrible, down to the third line with you again.
In the doghouse.
Yeah. So it feels like Ehlers is that guy for the Jets, but regardless of how you feel about it, while it's here, just enjoy it. I mean, you could try to sell high, I guess, on Ehlers if somebody else is really feeling this latest stretch and is like convinced that this is it. But I honestly don't think you're going to get that because I think everybody's got a little bit of that fear still in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Velarde's role on the top power play is probably more secure, but I don't know honestly if I'd take one versus the other rest of season. They're probably going to end up in the same range. That'd be my best guess. I think Ehlers is plenty more talented though, and so I guess I would probably take Ehlers over Velarde if I had to make a decision. Having said that, Velarde 19th in the league in individual scoring chances for per 60 on the season. That is just in 11 games. Obviously, he missed a good chunk of time, so take that for whatever it's worth. But he's playing very well and has returned to play very well, obviously, in this last little stretch. So both very good for right now and should be on rosters. Let's move on to a couple of Yegors. First up, we got to talk about Yegor Sharangovich. We were talking about this before. I don't actually know what's correct. So if somebody knows out there, let me know. But let's go with Sharangovich. Last 5 games for this player, 6 goals and an assist for 7 points, averaging 19 minutes a night there in Calgary. He's getting all the minutes playing on the top line with Elias Lindholm and Andrew Mangiapane, and then playing on the top power play as well with Lindholm, Kadri, and Connor Zary. Great spot for Sharangovich, absolutely. I'm a little bit conflicted on the player because on one hand, in the last 5 games here, he's got 3 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots, 4 shots, 2 shots in the last 5 games. So obviously those are good numbers. The scoring chances are a little less, so it seems like he's a bit more of a distance shooter. And sometimes that those shooting percentages aren't as sustainable if you're not generating the scoring chances as much as you're generating the shots. So that part gives me worry. The on-ice numbers are actually pretty bad. 230th in Corsi 4 per 60, 209th in scoring chances 4 per 60 over the last 5 games here, despite the big deployment with the big boys there in Calgary. So that part is still concerning. And his season-long metrics are pretty terrible, and he's been riding some obviously pretty hot percentages for the last little bit to get to this point. This is a pretty confusing player because obviously you see the upside. Don't mind jumping on him while he's hot and to see if this latest little stretch he can continue to build on that. He's done this before in New Jersey, which is what's giving me pause, where he really popped on the underlying metrics and I got a little bit excited. He got up on the top power play, did a couple of those things. He had a little stretch here or there. Mostly flew under the radar because it was very short stretches. Now it's a little bit bigger of a thing, and he's actually had this deployment for about 10 games now and has really started to translate it into points in the last few. So that's the part where I'm a little bit conflicted one way or the other. I don't know how you're seeing it, Blake, from your perspective, but at the moment, I'm content to just be like, okay, I'm willing to jump in on the player because the production is there at the moment, the deployment is there. Let's see if he continues to pump shots and he can actually sustain it. But it's not a player that I'm comfortable with rostering for or considering a hold by any stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it there. Like this is just a guy that you jump on when he's hot, right? Giggity, with consent. But you know, I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah, like you said, this guy's riding high on his percentages, right? 88% IPP over the last 5 games, 37.5% shooting. That's not going to stick, right? And then on ice shooting is 14.8. That's nuts. Okay, so yeah, it's way high on all 3 metrics there. I do like the deployment. Yeah, the deployment is really what's keeping my interest in this player because players can do this without that deployment, right? It's fine. It's just a hot streak, but I think you have to take a look because of the way he's being deployed. But I don't know. At the beginning of this week, I had a chance to get Sharon Govich, and I'm still not super interested. I ended up picking Blake Coleman in a lot of those spots, right, for Calgary's schedule, and I ended up holding Blake Coleman because he went off. Shout out to Blake Coleman. All right. Beautiful man, beautiful name. But yeah, I almost right now you got to go with Sharon Govich, but I feel like I think Blake Coleman's a little safer moving forward just because he doesn't rely on power play time or deployment really to hit, right? He's just an effective player at even strength, whereas Sharon Govich, yeah, he's running hot. And I don't know. Is that a hot take, Nate?
Might be a little bit of a hot take. I do like Coleman as a streamer, but Coleman has his fair share of absolute ice cold stretches as well. So I wouldn't say that either player are guys that I'm excited to like roster rest of season by any stretch. At this point, I just jump on Sharon Govich and ride it till the wheels fall off and then move on to the next thing. The other Yegor that I alluded to is Yegor Shinikov over in Columbus. Everything seems to be just absolute chaos. They lost Boone Jenner, they lost Patrick Laine, they're losing games. But Shinikov, 5 goals, 2 assists, and 7 points in his last 5, averaging over 18 minutes a night, which is obviously pretty interesting for fantasy purposes. 30th in shot attempts per 60 over the last 5 games as well, which is the most interesting and highest metric that Chinikov's put together here. On ice numbers are not great. 212th in Corsi 4 per 60, 172nd in scoring chances 4 per 60. On the season, he's pacing for 31 goals and 47 points total. So definitely there's some interesting shooting percentage luck going on there. I don't expect him to be like this amazing scorer, but I am kind of interested just because of the deployment right now. The Marchenko, Voronkov, Chinikov line was the most used line at 5v5 in Columbus's last game against New Jersey. And with them really just trying to figure out where they're going to deploy Goudreau and Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, and basically all the other guys that they have left on their team that have an NHL caliber resume. I really think that the Russian line could be a thing that continues and is a little bit of a fail-safe, for lack of a better word, for Pascal Vincent there. By the way, like, fire everybody in Columbus. Get them out of here. Like, this is an absolute disaster. It was a disaster before the injuries. Now it's just going to be highlighted even more. Kekalainen's got to go. Vincent's got to go. They got to, get somebody who has some semblance of a plan there because they have some terrific young players here and they seem to have absolutely no idea what to do with them. So, I don't think that's going to happen, honestly. Like, I've heard some people say, like, Vincent's not going to get fired this year because they've already lost Mike Babcock, obviously, and they're still reeling from firing their last coach, like it's probably true. Like Vincent is probably gonna be the guy for the rest of the season, which actually kind of gives me more hope for Chinikov because I do think that he's kind of latched onto this line. It really seems like they're gonna stick with this line for a good chunk of the season. Like I'm sure there'll be some games where they get split up, but I do think that this is a line that he likes, and so I do think like it wouldn't shock me if Chinikov gets 17 to 18 minutes for the rest of the season at this point. And with that, and with the amount of shots that he does produce, it's not like an incredible amount of shots, but he definitely does pump shots. So, yeah, a player who's hot now, I think you can grab whenever Columbus has a good schedule. I think he's just a pretty solid streamer at this point in my mind.
Yep, I would echo that. I was going to say fire everybody, but you just ate my sandwich, Nate. You just took it out of my mouth. I was going to take a bite. You slapped it out of there. But yeah, just nuke the front office there in Columbus. What is happening? Like Adam Fantilli, did they play him like 10 minutes the other night? Like this is the time. Get him out there. He's ready to go. It's not like, oh, we need to, ease him into it for his development. It's like, no, the guy's actually good to go and he looks good out there. Maybe give him a few minutes. Like, I don't know. It's pissing me off. Yeah, this guy Vincent, I don't know. He doesn't. I don't have any confidence in what he's doing, and to me, that's kind of a negative for Chinikov, as opposed to like, oh, it's like he's kind of riding these guys, and that's great. But like, he's done some stupid crap this season. So I don't know. It's like, oh, they're too successful. Like let's break these guys up and try and spread out the success. Like I don't know. First off, can you give Johnny Gaudreau like 20 minutes a night? Like we need to do that now. All right, put him with Fantilli. All right. And get Boone Jenner in one of those oxygen hyperbaric chambers. All right. And leave him in there. All right. You heal him up ASAP. That's the only way. That's the only way you get some wins here in Columbus. But yeah, I do like Chinikov. I like Voronkov, actually. I like Voronkov. His metrics probably don't show it as well as Chinikov, but I'm taking that big boy all day. That big Russian bear. I'm taking Voronkov because he's a beefer. But yeah, it's again, great streamer for Columbus when they've got that going, but I just don't trust the deployment. I don't trust the player. I don't know. I need to see him do it for a longer period of time.
Fair enough. All right, one more here. Let's talk about Mikael Granlund, who's got a goal, 7 assists, 8 points in his last 5. I have not checked the game that's ongoing right now to see if he got in on that one. He did. Another assist.
Legend.
Good for Mikael Granlund. So what do we do with this player? Over 22 minutes. The metrics are not great. 196th in shots per 60, 173rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On ice numbers are slightly better. 143rd in Corsi, 4 per 60, 138th in scoring chances, 4 per 60 on the season, pacing for 11 goals, but 68 points. Obviously, some people have picked up Mikael Granlund because of this hot stretch, all the crazy deployment he's been getting lately. What do you say to them? Are they holding on to Granlund for the week upcoming, or is he nothing more than a guy who you pick up when the schedule is good and kick to the curb when it's bad?
I don't know. This week is interesting because no one has less than 3 games, right? So I don't know. I think you could probably hold him through this week. Like you obviously set your lines and see where the gaps are and who's sitting on the bench. But Granlund's got 8 points. I mean, you're going to bench him? Who are you going to bench him for? Like, I don't know. You can absolutely drop Granlund, no question about it, but it always depends on who you're adding, right? So I'm not looking to drop Granlund. Look at this deployment. It's insane. And he's doing something with it, albeit with very bad metrics, and 3 goals on the season. Jeez. I mean, but, his IPP is 80% in the last 5 games. Like, it's basically the Granlund and Turtle show, Turtle Hurdle. That's really it. That's what's going on in San Jose right now. I like Fabian Zetterlund as well, but it is good to remember that San Jose isn't quite as bad as like those. I think we just keep thinking back to those 2 games where they lost 10 to nothing and 10 to 1, right? That's what we think of San Jose, and they're not really that team. They're kind of an upstart team, and they're I don't know. They can score some goals. Their defense is terrible, but Granlund's going to be on pretty much everything, and this deployment is insane. So, yeah, I'm not rushing to drop Granlund, but he's certainly not a must-hold.
Fair enough. All right, let's take care of some business. If you are here watching on YouTube, if you can leave us a like and hit the subscribe button, that does help us out. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're well over 600 at this point. But we do have some work to do to get to 1,000. If you're listening to this on the podcast, just pause it for a second, head over to YouTube. Only takes a minute. Hit us with that subscribe. We would really appreciate that. And you can also leave us a review or rating, depending on what your podcast app allows you to do. I don't know. I think we're in a spot where the Apple users need to step up once again. We've been talking about this little bit of a back and forth that we've had going on between the Apple Podcast users and the Spotify users throughout the season here. Yeah, it's been a little bit back and forth to say the least. But we've got a bunch more. Got a bunch more people leaving reviews on Apple or podcasts here, and I'd like to read some more. We had one obviously that we talked about there Friday night, Blake, that wasn't so kind. So if you're feeling sorry for us and you'd like to counterbalance that, you could leave something like this. This is from Hey, it's Josiah. He says, "Get your biscuits in here. Looking for an edge in your fantasy hockey league? Tired of being humiliated by your father-in-law who still doesn't respect you? Look no further. Not only do the fine gentlemen at Apples and Ginos provide a valuable look into the analytics that matter for fantasy hockey in a digestible and easy to listen manner, the banter between Nate, Blake, Hutch, Binksy, in parentheses, you'll be missed, and their expert guests makes this pod genuinely a fun listen and not dry like the Sahara, like you may expect from an analytics focused show. They're not just hockey experts with spreadsheets coming out of their ears, they're also genuinely good guys. So do you know what to do? Get your biscuits in here and get to biz." Man, what a review from, I'm assuming, Josiah, because the username was Hey, it's Josiah. So thanks for that. And we got a couple more as well, so I'm going to keep them coming. This one from Leafs One Number Fan with 2 N's. Thanks, guys. I'm now 8-1 week wins because of you guys. Keep it up with all that inside news. Appreciate the 5 stars there. And lastly, here, great pod for hockey from Jimmy Jamkin. I listen to these guys every chance I get. If you're undecided on who to play day to day or week to week in your league, get in the Discord. Plenty of help. So I think that's the best plug that I can give for the Apples and Ginos Discord. If you haven't found your way in there, check the show description, click the link, join us. We've got close to 1,000 fantasy hockey managers in there talking about hockey and fantasy all day, every day. You can definitely ask your questions in there and somebody will help you out with what they would do in your situation. If you need some more specialized and personalized advice, you can check out the Apples and Ginos Patreon. And I'm offering guaranteed answers to questions in there, and then also team reviews for a higher subscription fee. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out. And lastly, if you haven't already, you should really be checking out Mark Barber, 18 Skaters on Twitter. He's putting out daily summaries on the Apples and Ginos website. Just provides a really great, brief, concise snapshot into all of yesterday's action in the NHL and the fantasy performances that matter the most moving forward. So definitely check those out if you have not already. All right, Blake, are we ready for some have-nots?
I just feel so damn good. Thank you, everybody. I still think it's just so crazy people listen to this. I mean, not because it's not good, but like this is like a passion of ours, isn't it, Nate? So it's nice when other people kind of get on board with that, right? It's nice to know you're out there, all right? You're not alone. We're all together in this.
Absolutely. All right. We got to talk about Frank Vetrano for a minute. So Troy Terry and the Anaheim Ducks. Well, maybe I should say Adam Henrique in the Anaheim Ducks because Henrique just hung a hat trick on the Devils. But that didn't matter for Frank Vetrano. He, again, did not point in this game despite the Ducks putting up 5 goals. He has 0 points in his last 5 games. Actually, I think it goes back further than that. I didn't actually check my sheet pulls the last 5 games, but I think it's going back further than that at this point for Vetrano. And yeah, it's really a bit puzzling. Yeah, it's now 6 straight games for Vetrano without a single point. It's not great. He's still averaging about 17 and a half minutes time on ice. The shots are still pretty much there. 54th in shots per 60 over the last 5, but 280th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. So the scoring chances have really dried up. And then the on-ice stats have really cratered. 273rd in Corsi 4 per 60, 328th in scoring chances 4 per 60. I kind of think this is a direct function of Mason McTavish being out of the lineup, who was centering the Vetrano line before. And so Yeah, on one hand, Vetrano is still firing a good amount of shots. Like he had one game where he had 0 shots, but other than that, in this 6-game pointless streak, he's got 2, 4, 6, 3, and 4. So it's not like the shots are just completely missing, but it does seem like they're less dangerous than they have been for most of the season. So now on a 38 goal, 63-point pace on the season. What do we think about Vetrano at this point? Is he still a guy you're hanging on to? He's become like a set and forget part of many people's lineups, I feel like, to this point. Is he still that for you, Blake, or are you getting worried?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely worried. And to be honest, I was never in on the player to begin with. Like it just, I mean, yeah, it was a great start and it was a really nice story. Like what Anaheim did and how they started the season and how guys like Mason McTavish, Vetrano, Ryan Strome at one point was like popping off, Mintikov. But yeah, this team just isn't that team. You know, they had a new coach and they were kind of feeling their themselves there, giggity. But now it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of gone back down to normal, right? To me, like Frank Vetrano is 85% rostered right now. That's crazy to me. Like this is not a player that should be 85% rostered on Yahoo. Like I love the metrics and this we've talked about Frank Vetrano last year in terms of someone who we like their metrics. He does this, right? He generates a lot of shots, usually pretty decent with his scoring chances too, although that's kind of been off this season, right? He's a bit of a chucker, right? Gets in there, shoots, lots of Corsi for as well. So I don't have high hopes for this guy. And I don't know what you do with Frank Vetrano at this point. Like 85% rostered. I don't think that you can get off the player. Like, oh, take a look at Frank Vetrano. Yeah, he's got a 63-point pace. Like, no one cares about that. 63-point pace for an 85% rostered player on Anaheim. Ugh. So I don't know. I'm not really interested in this player moving forward, and I didn't pick him up anywhere. But yeah, if you have him, I think you got to just wait till Mason McTavish comes back and kind of see what we have, right? Because maybe it is as simple as that, and I hope it is because there's some things that's happened with Vetrano this year, like his increase in ice time, and there's the head coach there is prioritizing him a little bit. He's a big piece of that team right now, at least their offense. So that's different than last year. So that's one thing we can point at, but. I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think he's going to end up being like a 50, 55-point player when it comes to season end. And I think that's even that might be too high. I don't know. But what do you think? Like, what are you doing with Frank Vetrano moving forward, Nate? Like, is he, first off, do you have him anywhere and if you don't, like, what are you doing with him?
Yeah, I don't have Vetrano anywhere. Yeah, it's just a player I missed on. I obviously would have loved to have Vetrano through this stretch that he's put together. I also wouldn't feel that terrible about letting him go because I don't think that he's going to have a massive rest of season. But like 25 goal pace for the rest of the season, even a 30 goal pace, I think is well within the range of outcomes here. The shooting percentage is a little higher than he's typically had, but he's also playing with better players, at least once McTavish is back. So I don't discount that quite as much as I might normally. I do think the point pace is a little bit inflated, 79% IPP. That's probably going to come down, but he has been a decent IPP player throughout his career, so maybe not a huge regression there. Yeah, I think maybe like a 55-point pace rest of season and like a 30-goal pace is possible. So 30-goal, 55-point pace rest of season is maybe about where I'd peg him at this point, and I think that's plenty doable, but it's also like on the borderlines of super rosterable in a lot of spots. And when he's cold, it's going to feel really bad. And when he's hot, it's going to feel really good. So that's kind of where I'm at with Vetrano. At this moment, he's cold. I want to see him when McTavish is back. Hopefully, that's very soon here. Yeah, Anaheim does come right back in play on Monday, which is probably when you're watching this or listening to this. So if McTavish is back, then I'm definitely wanting to see what's going on with Vetrano at that point, and if they can instantly kind of rekindle that magic, that could obviously give him a little bit more of a floor. So, yeah, I just think Frank Vetrano. I say this about a few players, but I don't know that he's going to be a guy who wins or loses your league from here on out. He's had a stretch that's league winning worthy, but it's come in the early part of the season here, and I don't want to get completely married to that production in the past and think that it's got to continue here. Um, yeah, so basically, as long as the deployment is there, as long as he's playing with good players, I'm still interested, but I don't view him as a guy that you absolutely have to roster rest of season. A guy that I really don't want to be rostering is Jonathan Huberdeau, who also has 0 points in his last 5 games, averaging just over 16 minutes a night. Not on the top power play anymore. 339th in shots per 60, 293rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, on pace for 11 goals and 40 points on the season. Tell me, Blake, just give it to me quick. Is there any reason to roster Jonathan Huberdeau at this point?
I hate this, but no. Hell no. This is a guy we were low key excited about, like, oh, Daryl Sutter's out of there. Great. Like, let this man fly. Well, it's even worse. It's worse. I mean, geez. Yeah, this has been to me one of the biggest surprises just in fantasy hockey and since I've started playing. Like seeing the way that this man can go from 115 point season to now pacing for 40. And that seems like that's a stretch sometimes when you watch this man out there. He's invisible. He's not shooting at all. He's, his power play deployment is better. His ice time is better, but he has 3 points on the power play in 31 games. That's crazy. In his big year in Florida, he had 38, right? And obviously he had access to Barkov and players of that caliber, but I mean, Calgary's no slouch. They got some guys. They got some guys that can do something. And I just don't get it. I really think it's a confidence thing with Jonathan Huberdeau. He's mentioned it himself, right? He wants to get his confidence back. And like, I don't know how you go about doing that, my man. This is pretty rough stuff. Yeah, he's a drop. He's an easy drop for me. And I had him in 2 spots and I dropped him. And I hated it. It was very freeing. Like, oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore. But I dropped him and I didn't look back. And I don't know if I'll be picking him up again. He's 38% rostered on Yahoo. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I can't find it in myself to disagree. It is shocking. I just looked back. It's actually 8 straight games without a point for Jonathan Huberdeau.
Oh, God.
You just can't roster this player at this point. He's not providing you anything of value in any statistical category. So if you are one of the 37% rosterers out there on Yahoo, I think you're snoozing a little bit, and this guy needs to go ASAP. Let's keep rolling. We got to talk about Cole Caulfield, who has just 1 goal in his last 5 games. Obviously, this is something that can happen on some of these teams that don't have a lot to surround a player with. I do think Cole Caulfield is like an actual star in the National Hockey League at this exact time, this moment in time. I think he's tremendous. I think the metrics bear that out. But it's also a spot where like there's just no one around him. Like the last 5 games here where he has only the 1 goal. He's got 3 shots, 9 shots, 2 shots, 6 shots, 4 shots. Like there's only so much one man can do. Through that stretch, he's 17th in the league in shots per 60, 25th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, skating almost 21 minutes a night. Like what does the man have to do? Just unlucky in this last stretch, in my opinion. I do think that like on the season now, he's paced for 22 goals, 57 points, IPP at 66%. I think that goes up because honestly, there's nowhere else for the offense to go but through him. He's the only player who can consistently score on the Montreal Canadiens, and he's got a 7% shooting percentage and a 9% on ice shooting percentage. That's just something that I can't fathom will continue for Cole Caulfield. This is a guy who's been a high percentage converter and scorer throughout his career. The last year, he was up at 16.5%. The year before that, which was essentially his rookie year, it was at 12.2%. And to be at 7% this far into the season is just crazy. Even if there's nobody to feed him the puck, he's good enough to convert at a much higher rate than that. So I'm still in on Cole Caulfield. I actually do think this is probably a buy low moment. But again, what is the ceiling here, Blake? Like, are you actually excited about Cole Caulfield being a buy low, or is it a spot where the Canadians are just so bad that you can't even get excited about a good player there?
Yeah, that's it right there. It's like that's sort of the level of excitement on your buy low, right? I'm very much in agreement with you that this player I think he's a star. Like if he was on another team, I'd be absolutely excited. Like go out and get this man. This is a slam dunk. He's going to do it. There's no question. But yeah, like Montreal, like again, injury ravaged, like they're just, it's not a great place to flourish, right? It reminds me of Connor Bedard a little bit, right? But Cole Caulfield has better metrics, So this season anyway, like this guy's good to go. The team is poor, right? And it's not just the team like, oh, he needs better line mates. It's like the system too, like the way they're playing. They're doing what they have to do to try and win games, right? And that might not always equal letting Cole Caulfield loose on the offense. Like when you have limited talent, you have to change your game. Like I learned that in 1995 with the New Jersey Devils. That's right. Like you don't have a good team, so we want to win the game though. So we got to do something different, right? And that's kind of what I see coming out of Montreal. It's not an offensive hotbed, that's for damn sure. But pace rest of year, I think I'd love to see 70. I'd love to see a 70-point pace for Cole Caulfield. I think that would make me feel good about this player. I think it's doable. Yeah, like 7% shooting on the season. No, that's going to get up into the double digits, and it should quickly, right? But damn, it's really rough. I love the deployment. We just got to be patient. I'd be throwing offers out there for Cole Caulfield, but definitely don't go crazy, right? Don't sell the farms, get Cole Caulfield, right? See what the tipping point is. Find out what it's going to take to get this player. Throw in a draft pick if you need to. But yeah, get Cole Caulfield on your team. I picked him up in 2 spots. I drafted him once and picked him up in 2 spots. I'm in on the buy low, but yeah, it's not like a slam dunk by any means.
Yep. Okay, let's do a little bit of compare and contrast here with some underperforming stars. So we got Kirill Kaprizov, we got Tage Thompson, we got Brady Tkachuk. Each one of these players has a single point in their last 5 games. Each one of these players is still skating a good complement of minutes. Brady Tkachuk, 18 minutes the last 5. Tage Thompson, over 19 and a half. Kirill Kaprizov, over 20 and a half. Brady Tkachuk is the one with the good metrics, which is something that Brady Tkachuk does. He's 11th in shots per 60 and 11th in individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5 games. Tage Thompson's there at 86th in shots per 60, 123rd in individual scoring chances for per 60. With Kaprizov, the story's a little bit different. 230th in shots per 60, but still 65th in individual scoring chances for per 60. So getting chances, but not able to get the pucks on net in a lot of these cases. The underlying metrics in terms of the on-ice numbers are still like decently solid. Nobody's in the hundreds in any of the metrics that we like to look at, the shot attempts for 60 or the scoring chances for per 60. So they're all still upper level, just not like absolutely elite in the on-ice stuff. So if you're redrafting, let's say a couple point system, Blake, rest of season, you're redrafting today. How are you ordering these players? What's moving the needle for you? What are you seeing with these guys?
Ooh, what a question. Oh my God. Well, first off, to any of these owners, this is pretty damn frustrating, isn't it? Like all players we're super excited about. I mean, Tage and Cap for sure, right? Brady Tkachuk has his own value, certainly in category leagues. But yeah, damn. I think I would go Kaprizov first and then Tage and then Brady. That's sort of the way I would draft them. I can't see this continuing for Kaprizov. I love the deployment. Obviously, yeah, last 5 games, shots to go over 60. That's terrible. That's not what we want to see, but it's a small enough sample size that I don't think that it's something that it's the way that he is, right? He's 84th in shots to go per 60 on the season, and he's been higher than that, right? So obviously for 5 games, you shoot at a 230th overall rank. That's going to wreck your season rank, right? So I see that coming back, but the Corsi 4 is there, right? So he's just missing the net. He's been unlucky. They had a coaching change there in Minnesota, so he's got to figure out kind of how to make things work, but he's still getting a ton of ice time and consistently over 20 minutes, right? That hasn't changed under new coach Jay Hines. So yeah, I think I take Cap there. Tage, I don't know. It's an interesting one with Tage. Like he's a player that had that amazing season, but I'm not all the way there with Tage. You know what I mean? Like I do think he's a star. I think 90 points, Tage, sure, that's something that we should really expect from him year to year. But with Cap, it's like I expect 100 points per year, right? And 50 goals, right? So I think that's where it is. And it's been interesting to me that Buffalo has been winning or putting up some goals, but yet Tage does nothing, right? He's not in on any of the goals. Like we're not hearing about him. I'm wondering if there's like some injury concerns there with Tage, or just he's playing through something or he's not 100%. So that's sort of where I'm at there. And then Brady Tkachuk, I'm a big fan of that player. I think he's a buy low. He's a mega buy low. These guys all are, but I think Brady Tkachuk can be gotten. And I still think Brady Tkachuk is a point per game player. I think he's an 80-point player, which is really nice with what he provides, right? If you're in a points league with any banger weighting, this guy's going to give you a bunch of value as well, right? I'm talking points leagues, Brady Tkachuk by low, right? So yeah, that's sort of the way I do it, but it doesn't feel good. I've got Cap and Tkachuk in a couple leagues here. I don't know. How would you rank them, Nate?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to go about it. Like, It's tough. Brady's lack of points so far on the season, 66-point pace, is really just tied back to the on-ice shooting percentage not being great. Last couple of years, he's been between 11.2 and 11.5%. This year, it's at 8%. The Corsi 4 per 60 is actually better this year than last year. So I'm not like super worried about Brady in terms of like the team situation or any of that just absolutely changing and being so much worse than last year. That still seems the same. It's really just an on ice shooting percentage function there. So I think Brady is who he thought he was. Nothing really to change there. For the other two, Tage Thompson and Kirill Kaprizov, their shots per 60 has come down this year, and both are just like shooting percentage is in the gutter. The on ice shooting percentage for Tage is also in the gutter. They're not as dangerous when he's on the ice this year. Part of that is him, but part of that is also his teammates not being as good this year either. Really just seems like Buffalo on the whole has struggled to find their mojo this year the way that they had it rolling for a lot of last year, at least offensively. And then with Kaprizov is the one I'm actually feel like I'm the most confident in rebounding a fair bit. The deployment is still there, up over 20 minutes. The IPP at 60% when he's been the lowest he's had before in a full season is 77. Like that's going to come way up. That's going to be a huge boost to his numbers immediately. His shooting percentage is like half of his career average at this point. Like
Makes no
he's
sense.
on pace for 23 goals and he should be on pace for like 46 just based on the metrics that he does have right now. And even those are lower than we would have expected. On ice numbers are actually like the best of his career right now, which is kind of the interesting part. And the on ice shooting percentage is still there, which means his teammates are still putting the puck in the net basically the rate they have been in the past. It's really just been on his percentage of those, and it's really just been on his ability to actually convert the shots that he's getting. So, of all these guys, I do think Kaprizov figures it out the fastest and gets to the highest heights. So Kaprizov would be the top one. I would take Tkachuk over Thompson just for safety, because I really don't know if it's a Thompson thing, if it's lingering effects from the injury. There's a lot of different things that you could posit, but a lot of them just point in a negative direction for Tage. So I am adjusting expectations for Tage rest of season relative to where I had him projected for. Still think he's a terrific player and he's on track to be a superstar. I think he'll probably score 100 points in this league at some point. I just don't think it'll be this year anymore. So Kaprizov to Chuck Thompson for me in a cacuffle style points format. All right, let's do another one of these. Let's throw some Darnell Nurse and Chris Letang at you real quick. Both banger style defensemen, not on the top power play. Still usually good to put up some points, but in the last 5 here, neither of these guys putting up much of anything, a single point for each of them. What do you like about either of these players? Just briefly, give me who you're taking in point style format.
I'm taking Letang all day, every day. Darnell Nurse, get the hell out of my sight. All right. Yeah, but I mean, it's not actually that cut and dry. And I know you're going to talk about this, Nate, because Darnell Nurse has got some things going on that actually look pretty damn good. But to me, I think Letang is. I feel much more safe with Letang. He's known for his offensive production. Obviously, this year he's spending most of his time on power play too, and that is affecting things, right? And his minutes are down because we got EK65 in town. So yeah, Letang is kind of taking a back seat there offensively, but he's done it before and he can do it again. That's a big difference there between him and Darnell Nurse to me. Darnell Nurse is not an offensive defenseman, right? He did get 43 points last year. That's his career high. That's excellent, right? I think, that's probably what we're looking at for both these players moving forward, right? But right now, Darnell Nurse is on a 29-point pace, whereas Letang is on a, 40-point pace, right? And I think that's probably actually pretty accurate. I think that's where we can sort of expect these players. And I do think that there's a good chance that Letang gets back on power play 1 at some point, right? He's a part of that core there. He's well respected on the team. Not that Darnell Nurse isn't, but Letang has been relied on in the past for offensive production. So I think he has a clearer path to that. What say you, Nate?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for point production, Letang's definitely got an edge there. He's just always been a terrific 5v5 and power play point producer. Obviously not getting the same kind of power play time this year with Carlson in the fold, but still a very effective defenseman. I actually think his on-ice shooting percentage is probably good to come up a fair bit. Over the last couple of weeks here, the Penguins are 6th in the league in 5v5 scoring chances for per 60. Do think they start to convert a little bit better, and Letang can be a beneficiary of that. 42% IPP on the season does feel about right. So maybe we're looking at a 45, maybe 50 point Letang without top power play. That feels about right to me. Darnell Nurse is an interesting one. Second amongst all defensemen in shots per 60 over the last 5 games, despite the lack of production. And on the season, 15th. So he's definitely firing the puck. And 33% IPP. I mean, for a guy like Nurse, that's not too crazy. I do think he probably gets a little bit better on the on-ice shooting percentage, so that could come up a little bit. But again, you're probably maxing out at a 40-point pace for Darnell Nurse, even with all the best things happening for him. So take that for what it's worth. I do think that both of these guys are plenty valuable moving forward, and the difference between the two is probably a lot closer than I would have said at the beginning of the year. All right, let's move on to another segment. We got to talk about a player who is all good under the hood, which is the name that our good friend Mr. Josh Hutchinson gave us for this segment. I want to talk about Adam Fantilli for a second. There's another player that I want to talk about, but I think I'm going to save him for another week. Adam Fantilli, like even in the last 5 games, 5 points his last 5 games, including 3 goals, 36th in the league in shot attempts per 60 in that span, skating just over 15 minutes a night. It's a player that they really need to get more ice time to. I saw a tweet that he was demoted in down to the 4th line in that game, in the last game there, which just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why you think that's a good path. Like, the season is lost for the Blue Jackets. You absolutely have to accept that. The season is lost. You have to see what you're getting from these young players. And to some extent, I do get it, because like Pascal Vincent is coaching for a job. Jarmo Kekalainen is general managing for a job at this point. But honestly, I think they're both done, and they just need to accept that they got to see what they have in the young players. And honestly, the young players are their best chance, because Adam Fantilli is terrific in my mind. He's got 21 points in 31 games on the season so far, 24 goal, 56-point pace, 75th in the league in shots per 60. That's a great number. Honestly, he's been doing everything for this team, and he's absolutely on a superstar track in this league, in my opinion. Like, it would not shock me in the slightest if next year he comes out and pops 90 points. It's not going to be this season with this current iteration of the Blue Jackets, but if things start to go right there with the talent that they do have, like you've heard me talk about Werenski, I think Laine's a lot better player than he's been this year under this coach. I think Goudreau, same thing. I think there's definitely a huge ceiling for Fantilli as soon as next year. Maybe it doesn't pop next year. Maybe it takes a little longer than that for the Blue Jackets to right the system here. But Fantilli is absolutely going to be a star in my mind. And I want to highlight a player like this because if things do change, weirder things have happened. Pascal Vincent could be fired tomorrow, and they could bring in a coach who absolutely changes things, and the whole team just rises up to the occasion. Fantilli becomes a 20-minute-a-night player. Like, there are so many ways. If that does happen, I will be very, very excited. I will be insufferable about how excited I am about Adam Fantilli if those things happen, because I do think this is a player who can absolutely play with the elites of the elites in the league right now at, what is he, 19 years old? It's just incredible in my mind what he's doing. It's being a little bit overshadowed, obviously, by Bedard and some others that are playing really well this year. But I just want to wax a little bit poetic about Adam Fantilli and what I think his potential in this league is. Your thoughts, Blake?
Yeah, I love it. I agree with the player evaluation there. I'm really excited about this player. He passes the eye test too. Damn. I mean, this is an exciting player. He's very talented. I do worry though, like where he is, right? Like in Columbus there. Like, yeah, so now he's dealing with Pascal Vincent and whatever. I don't know the GM's name. You keep saying it, so I'll just, what is his name?
Jarmo Kekalainen.
Yeah, but Gesundheit. That's terrible. Yeah, but I do worry a little bit about the environment. Like, it's not awesome to develop in an environment, first off, a losing environment, but also one that has so much controversy. Like, they started out the season with Mike Babcock, looking at this kid's phone, and it's just been kind of rough. I would love to see a new coach and new general manager come in here and just clean house, right? That to me would be best case scenario for Adam Fantilli and the Blue Jackets, because they just got a lot of bad mojo going on. But as far as the player goes, yeah, I'm very excited. I love the 90-point potential there that you're given. Maybe not next year, but yeah, that's very interesting to me, and that makes me kind of look at this player a little bit differently. But yeah, I'm really excited about him. I hope he starts getting on power play 1 consistently, right? With Boone Jenner out, this guy should be on power play 1. What are we doing? What are we doing, Pascal Vincent? I don't know. All right. You want a job, don't you? Put Adam Fantilli on power play 1. Book it. What are we doing?
All right. Let's keep rolling. Let's talk about the move of the week. Blake, start us off here. What's your move of the week?
Yeah, I didn't do anything crazy this week. I actually had, when I set my lineups, like I was beating almost all of my opponents in games played. So there wasn't a huge urgency for me to go out and pick up a bunch of waiver ads. So yeah, I was just careful with my ads. But one ad that I did pick up was Blake Coleman. I picked him up in 3 spots, as I said earlier, and I ended up holding him for the week because he was awesome. He's had 8 points in 6 games, which is crazy. And I picked him over Mikhail Backlund in a lot of spots. I picked him over Sharon Govich in 1. And what I did, I really did sort of compare them by leaning on the metrics, right? I did a full A&G evaluation of these players. I was like, yeah, Blake Coleman, like shots on goal, individual scoring chances for, reasonable deployment over a guy like Sharon Govich that was similar, but didn't have the metrics to back it up, right? And since, he's on power play 1 and everything else, but it worked out. And this guy popped. He got 5 points in 4 games for me in the week. So it took me over the top. I won all 3 of those matchups. That's amazing. Also this week, I did mention I traded for Ovechkin in another points league with Banger waiting straight up for DeBrincat. So that's twice I've got Ovechkin straight up for DeBrincat. And I feel good about this. I still believe this guy's going to put up 25, 35 goals. I did get 1 game out of Ovechkin there. And yeah, I won that matchup too. So there you go. I don't know. Where you at, Nate?
Yeah, my move of the week was in one specific league. I had a pretty good early week schedule. I didn't need to make a lot of early week moves. I had a pretty optimized team in the early going, had some off nights from last week's streamers, that kind of thing. So I didn't make a lot of early week moves and really just didn't need to make a lot of moves in general to optimize my team and optimize my roster for the week. Mm-hmm. So I ended up rostering 4 goalies while I was streaming. And sometimes like this is going to happen. I think people misnomer 0G in a few different ways that I've tried to be explicit against on the podcast here, but I'm definitely willing to roster goalies if it makes sense in a given week, in a given situation. Definitely don't need to go overboard with it, but it's definitely a very viable option to end up rostering 4 goalies, especially if your skaters are just optimized and like there's no point in picking up a skater to sit on your bench the entire week. If that's going to be the case, then there's probably not a reason to do that. So I ended up rostering 4 goalies while streaming. Sometimes you really just need to avoid overthinking your lineup and making really marginal moves just to like feel something inside you. Like, yeah, I did that thing that's going to help my lineup this week. You never know if there's going to be injuries to your squad later in the week. If you have the option to just kind of stay liquid and keep your moves to the end of the week, even if you're making like you end up making marginal moves at the end of the week, that's better than making marginal moves at the beginning of the week. Yeah. So if the move that you're making, you're like, okay, I'm getting 1 extra game in the early week and I'm picking up this like 2% rostered player to replace my other 2% rostered player, like what are the actual chances that this is going to move the needle for me? Sometimes you just don't need to make that granular of a move and really just end up using a bunch of ads early in the week on players that are not going to affect the final outcome of your matchup. So in those cases, it's best to stay liquid, keep yourself moving to the end of the week, and then injuries crop up, different things happen. You never know. Somebody offers you a trade and it gets done by the end of the week. There's lots of ways that these things can happen, and it'll behoove you to have some additional ads left for the end of the week. So that's my little bit of advice for this week. What do you think about my use of the word behoove there, Blake? You made a pretty strong reaction.
I was just going to say, why he say it like that? I don't know. He leaned into the mic to behoove. I don't know. Sorry if I blew out your speakers, everybody. But yeah, Nate did it first, so I'm just trying to copy him.
All right, let's recap the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. So, yeah, Josh Norris did the thing,
Got
had the
another
first
assist
pick.
too. Oh man.
I got Josh Norris, and yeah, he absolutely crushed this week. He had a goal and an assist today. I don't know what the points is going to end up, but I ended up crushing Casey Middlestat, as we all knew would happen when I picked him.
Oh my
It
god.
was written in the stars for sure. So Blake is still up 6-3 on the season, but I've got a little 2-week winning streak. And it's come to my attention, Blake, from yourself, that we absolutely just completely whiffed on doing the picks on Friday for the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. That's completely my fault. We were running a bit of a beefer of an episode, and I just totally whiffed on that. So that's on me. It's not on you, and it is your turn to pick first. We'll continue with what we had on tap on Friday. So I think I know where you're going with this, but tell the people who you're going to pick with the first pick in the head-to-head streamer deathmatch for this week.
I got one word for you. Nicolaj. All right, let's go. This is going to be interesting. Nate and I have made a gentleman's bet here that we're going to take 3 game players instead of 4 game players, because there's only 2 teams with 4 games. So I'm taking Ehlers. I realize he has 3 games, but I love the player and I'm excited. Nate, how are you going to combat this legend?
Well, basically, I'm going to take the player who plays with Ehlers at even strength in on the power play and hope that they just kind of monopolize each other, and Velarde gets more goals and Ehlers gets more assists, and I win that way. So I'm going to take Gabriel Velarde.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I definitely
Go
think
Jets.
I said on Friday, like, I would take Ehlers. I do think he's a better player than Velarde. He's clearly the top player to stream this week if he is available still in your league. But yeah, I think Velarde's a terrific consolation prize, so I'm not mad about that at all. All right. That's all we got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. I hope you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.